Hello.
Welcome, Rita, and thank you so much for being here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. Rita is a very close friend I have, so it is also very good to see her and to speak to her about this novel. Rita, let me make a proper presentation. Rita Correia graduated in French and Portuguese studies and at the University of Lisbon in 2005. In 2008, she completed her MA in comparative literature, and that's when we met. We met at the same research center at University of Lisbon, the Comparative Studies Center, Research Center. Her dissertation was on the construction of personal identity in the novel Dom Juan by Torrente Ballester, and the theater play Dom João e Julieta by Natalia Correia. She has worked as a translator amongst other occupations, and since 2017 she has been teaching Portuguese as foreign language in several schools and as a private tutor in Lisbon, in Portugal. Okay, so welcome, Rita. Thank you so much for joining us here. My first question to you would be, of course, when did you come across with this author and with this novel? Why did you? And is this your favorite novel or from Cardoso Pires? This would be my first question to you.
So good evening to you all. Thank you for this wonderful invitation, for this opportunity to be talking to you all. You people who are, I assume most of you, newcomers to the work of Cardoso Pires and maybe even to Portuguese literature. Thank you, João. And answering your questions. I have no idea when I first came across the novel. It was a long time ago. I don't remember in what context I read it. I know I've read it several times since. Both the ballads and O Delfim are my two favorite novels by Cardoso Pires, and they're probably some of my favorite novels in Portuguese literature, because I think Cardoso Pires has a very specific and amazing writing style, very specific. Only maybe Nuno Bragança, for me, would be more or less at the same level in their work of language. So I've come across this novel a long time ago. I love them both, this one and Delphi, and they are very similar narratives, not exactly in the genre. They're completely different there, but the theme and the way they portray Portuguese society, that is very similar. So I think they are best read together.
Yes, you're right. One thing that I find very amusing even is in this novel, it's very present, is it's the body, the portrait of human body in Cardoso Pires, you see, because they are parts of the human body that become independent, and this is common in this novel, the ballad, and it's common with a similar thing happens in Delphine as well. In Delphine, there's a tooth that becomes independent. It becomes an entity. And here is the nail. The nail becomes an entity in itself. And the nail of Elias, right?
You have images, sorry. You have an imagery of severed bodies, body pieces. You have that here, that fragment appliances, where he goes to the orthopedics stores, and those body pieces become an entity by themselves, but a non-functioning entity because they are body pieces. You have in the Delphine the servant who lacks a limb, lacks an arm. So there's always this imagery, which is, I mean, no disrespect, obviously, to people who have any physical impairments, but there's always this idea of decadence, a decay of the body, which is also the social body, of course, the whole of society. Yeah, that's always present.
Okay, and another general kind of question: why would you recommend this novel? What aspects do you think should be highlighted in order to help the new readers of this book? What do you think?
Okay, so first I think Elias is an amazing character, a great character. He's a bit of an ambiguous character because he's at the same time repelling and endearing. There's something about him that for me is very endearing, and I will talk about that later, because he's powerless. He's as powerless as everyone else there. And all the details of even his obsession about Mena make him an endearing character. It's also the very specific and at the same time universal character of this narrative. Of course, it portrays Portuguese society with all it has that's very specific, but it also at the same time, it highlights the way any dictatorship will work, will function, and the structures of power and the way they are very pervasive and they invade personal relationships. So I think it's very exemplar in that regard. So you are reading a novel, of course, about a very specific time and place, but you could be reading a novel about any other time and place where a dictatorship holds power over everyone's lives. So it's very universal meaning.
Okay. And okay. And what aspects would you highlight in order to help our readers?
Okay, so
because this is not an easy book to read, of course. Okay. It isn't.
I actually have a presentation. If you allow me to present.
I will.
I now realize I have a lot to say. I'm not sure we'll have the time. I'll try to make it short because I would very much like to hear everyone's comments and questions. But I'll try to go through it first, maybe, and then take the comments. Okay. So kind of a disclaimer. Oh, wait a second. No, now I cannot find. I cannot find my PowerPoint.
If you want, you can send it.
It doesn't let me share it.
No?
Give me a second, please. No, it's not here. Ooh. I don't know, maybe. Here.
Okay.
Well, now I cannot see your faces.
Okay.
So, you can see it?
Yes. Yeah? Perfect.
So, I was saying that this doesn't mean to be a comprehensive reading, of course. I have my own biases, my own interests in previous readings, so this is very much conditioned by that. First of all, I don't know if you talked about this, but the title of the book, The Ballad. You have several definitions for what a ballad is. Of course, it started by being, in the English tradition, a poetic narrative of legends. But you also have those more common meanings of a song with a simple structure, a type of popular song, or a song with a romantic theme. The author himself commented on his choice for the title, and he said it was because he was talking about real events that were touched by legend. So it comes closer to the first meaning. But on the other hand, in a way, the romantic theme is very central to the narrative, because things seem to revolve a bit, and this will become more obvious further along. Things revolve a bit around the affair between Mena and Dantas Castro. And on the other hand, the genre of the novel, which is the detective novel, which is a very popular form of narrative, a very popular genre. Okay, so I think all the meanings are present here. Another thing, so the genre. So we talked about, I just said, of course, it's a detective novel, but it's not really a very traditional detective novel, because we already know who committed the crime, or we sort of know, because the characters, Mena and Barroca and Fontenova, are the suspects. But at this point, no one really admitted to the crime. But somehow there's no real doubt in our minds, correct? So we're not trying to chase a murder or find out who the murder is. It's more about understanding what led to the crime. And within this genre, it reminds me more of a noir kind of novel, or similar to of course, the noir in film, because of the very dark atmosphere, urban atmosphere, the fact that all these characters they're all very faulted. The morality of everyone here is very dubious. Our hero, or our anti-hero, which one is which, I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone can be sure. The detective and Dantas Castro are not heroes, they're anti-heroes. Dantas Castro is not at all a likable character, for sure. And also the presence of this femme fatale, Mena, a highly sexualized character. Elias's views on Mena are highly sexualized. He obsesses about her body. Her body is described in detail, immediately at the beginning by the stonemason, her naked breasts. And at the same time, this femme fatale is at the center of the narrative, and she's a very smart and manipulative type of character, which is also in accordance to the genre, the noir genre. And it's, of course, a piece of what Linda Hutchins called historiographic metafiction, so self-reflexive fictionalization of actual factual material. Questions, of course, the traditional historiography. And bearing this in mind, and you have already talked a bit about this, I would ask this question: why was the genre chosen for the author to frame this portrait?
Well, let me just interrupt you to say something. This word ballad also has a musical kind of tone to it, right? And when we define this novel as a polyphonic novel, we are also picking something that comes from music, you know. So ballad comes, I think, has something to do with that, with like a choir of voices singing a ballad, something like that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
So please.
So you have already talked a bit about the narrative structure, quite a bit, so I'll be fast here. So you have these two levels, and they're quite linear in the way they progress each one, but then you have these fragments, and here it is, a polyphony, of course, and these fragments are very interesting to me because they are useful above all to create a comprehensive portrait of Portuguese society, but also for the fact that they are fragments and that they are all these different voices. Of course, this makes it difficult to create a cohesive and coherent narrative about the facts. And here we go back to that idea of historiography and that difficulty of looking back to any event and to the past, and to be able to fully understand what happened. So we always need to create a story about it. I'll try to be brief here. So the novel is full of houses. Okay, we have, of course, the very important house, Casa da Vereda, where the second level narrative takes place. You have a description of Elias's house, and you have two other houses. So for me, when I read this and when I think about all these houses, I necessarily think of the importance of the house as a microcosm of all social relationships, and the importance that the idea of the Portuguese house has in Portuguese society in this moment in time. So if you think of the country and society as a whole, the family will be a microcosm, and the household, so the house and the family, will be a very specific microcosm, where all the larger social relationships are reflected. So there was a debate in, sorry, I have a visiting cat. I have a very curious cat. So in Portuguese society, there was a debate in architecture about what the Portuguese house should be like, in very generic terms. But this is, of course, just a symptom of a more a wider debate about national identity and cultural tradition, and what these are or should be, and of course about the structure also of the traditional family. So the Portuguese family and the Portuguese household was ideally, it was seen as a humble, clean and friendly, with of course a very traditional family structure, married father and mother with children, the father always this undisputed authority, but also benevolent, a forgiving father, very much like not the head of state, but the de facto head of state, the dictator. The mother always submissive to the father's authority, but also a very nurturing figure, and the children obedient. That's what you would expect from children, and period. And you have many examples of this in advertising, in music, in fado, in propaganda. And I brought you this very, very, very known illustration of a traditional family in a traditional house with God, fatherland, and family as the big motto. So again, the country and the family.
We are not seeing the image. We are still in the PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, but this is in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
You can't see it?
Not the image, no.
Right. Let me try to share this again. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Oh, yes. Now, yes.
So it's a very, very well-known illustration of the Portuguese, the traditional Portuguese household, humble but clean, with a very happy family, father that comes from work.
Catholic, of course, Catholic.
Catholic, of course, God, fatherland, and family. So whenever I look at these four houses, they are, of course, doubles, but reversed double images of this idea of the Portuguese household. The Casa da Vereda, where the hideout for the characters, so it should be a safe space, a safe house for those that are excluded by the official narrative, but it's not. In reality, all the same violence prevails there. So you have, there is where all the confrontations between Dantas Castro and Barroca and Fonte Nova take place. It's where you have that episode of the anklet, Mena's anklet. And if you think of it, that anklet very much resembles the ball and chain used by prisoners. So it limits movement. But also, it also always reminds me of those rings you put on the pigeon's foot to identify ownership. So it's a mark of ownership. They keep mentioning it as a love token, but of course, there's always this other meaning. In his apartment, which was described earlier, and I would highlight that it's clearly a decaying house for a decaying family. So the house is empty, meaning there's no one else there, but it's full of family memorabilia and heirlooms, portraits. Clearly here, the character is built as, for me, someone who is in a position of decay. So his father was a judge, right? You wouldn't expect him to be working on what he's working, because if you think that Portuguese society was very stratified, you would expect something else from him. So this image of decadence also reflects a bit that decadence in Portuguese society for me. And then you have Mena's apartment in Estrada da Luz, when Elias goes there during the investigation. And what you find is an apartment that offers kind of a conflicting narrative, because it's the apartment of a modern, independent woman who lives alone. And of course, this is not at all what the idea of how a woman should live was. And you also have the apartment in Avenida de Roma, the apartment that was shared by Mena and Dantas Castro. I will not talk about it now, but in the third part of the novel, your PDF, you'll see that an important event will also take place there that again highlights this violence and this reverse mirror image of the house as that haven for a happy family. Okay?
We are not moving to another slide. No.
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 No. The main characters? No.
It's a bit static.
It's static, yes. It's in the same. I don't know why. Probably you have to tick an option of some sort. Yeah.
But they have been moving, right?
No.
No. No. Oh my God. What if I do it like this? Do you see them moving?
The main, yes, well, I don't know. Try. Yes, now it is moving. It's perfect.
Okay, so I can't have it full screen apparently. Okay, so briefly about this triangle of characters, Mena, Elias, and Dantas. So as I said, the romantic narrative is very central to this, although we are kind of led to believe that this would be a political narrative, but somehow it doesn't seem to be very political, in the sense that what the motives for the crime are not political, as João has already said, and what seems to move the narrative are these relationships between Dantas and the two male figures, of course, but very much between Elias, Menas, and Dantas. So Mena, first of all, her character is presented through Elias' gaze, through his perspective, and he's a voyeur. In what regards Mena, he is definitely a voyeur. He watches her in every way. He watches her through pictures. He watches her while she sleeps. He watches her during interrogation, and he obsesses. And he has all those hallucinations, as João has pointed out, very much about Mena. So while Dantas was Mena's lover, Elias is kind of a vicarious lover. And it's funny that both of them are powerless in their ability to act in the world. They are powerless in what regards Mena, because somehow she seems to be out of their reach, or something in her seems to be out of their reach. And there's a kind of a symbolic impotence in here. And in Portuguese, both are the same word. Impotência is both impotency and powerlessness. So I think this is very present here.
And there's also a postcard.
Mm-hmm. I think no, it's still in the second part, yeah.
That speaks directly about that, about impotency.
Further ahead, I think, yes, there are no impotent men.
Only incompetent woman. Yes, that's it. That's it.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
It's that postcard is interesting because, of course, it underlines this idea, and also this construction of Dante's character, not exactly as an idealist. I mean, he tried a coup. Of course, there was an attempted coup, but his motivations seem to be a bit more self-centered, I would say. It's about his own powerlessness or impotence in the world. and not exactly, I wouldn't say it's exactly about an idea of, changing society and freeing society. So Dantas is only known to us indirectly through Mena's account, at least at this point, although we will have some notes and some things that are, of course, his words, like the letter to the dear friend and lawyer. And then we have Elias, and this is what I said earlier. He's kind of expected to embody one of the faces of the regime, although he's not the political police. He is the criminal police. Yet he is also powerless, and he's as lost as everyone else. And if you see his comments on the newspaper's headlines and his comments on the feed, you realize he's in the same position as everyone else here. It's a world of lies, and he tries to navigate this world, but he's lied to. The newspapers lie, the feed lies, and he's trying to navigate this world as best as he can, basically like everyone else. So that's what makes him a bit of an endearing character for me. Can you see the change of the slide?
Yes. Perfect.
So it was the full screen, the problem. So you have all these fragments, and João already pointed out at least the testimonies at the Oddments Department, Baldo Sobrantes. But you also have other fragments, at least I call them fragments because they have titles and they are pieces of the text that somehow function as a whole. So you have the first one where you have a description of Corporal Barroca, and it's an interesting description because since these fragments show a sample of Portuguese society, what you will see is this very stratified society, and the way the relations between the characters work, between these different strata in society. So Corporal Barroca, the poor Corporal Barroca, I always feel sorry for him. His portrait is not very generous. The farm boy, taciturn, cunning, suspicious and limited, the true son of the Alentejo. Alentejo, I'm not sure if you are aware, was and still is one of the poorest provinces of the country, and very agricultural. And so what you have here is an example of what a person coming from that background would be and would function like. Even his name, I'm sure it's difficult for you to have a perception of the importance of names in this context, in the context of the novel and the Portuguese society. But Bernardino Barroca is clearly not a name for the upper class, I would say. Whereas Mena, Filomena Taide most definitely is, Dantas Castro as well, Fonte Nova. So the characters and their characterization regarding their social strata starts with their names immediately. So moving to this Oddments department, what I would like to point for each of these fragments is that Emilia, the fragment of the concierge, for me shows very much that relationship between the lower class and the upper class. Emilia, who cannot believe, as João pointed out, that Mena, such a good girl from such good families, could be involved in that ghastly affair. Marta Fontenova Sarmiento, so the mother of the architect, and of course an architect will immediately be a member of the upper class. And the testimony of the mother helps build this idea, this character. She refuses to talk. She thinks that all of it is awful and disrespectful, and etc. So it's obviously the position of someone who is, in a way, comfortable. It is the members of the lower classes who are more scared. They speak more. Their depositions have more information because they, of course, are more scared than the others. Then we have that conversation in the bar that João has already mentioned. And for me, what's interesting there is not only the informants, the PID informants, because the conversation was overheard and then reported, but also that the way it shows that camaraderie between Dantas and Mena's father, highlighting both of them as members of this upper class, of this colonial elite, and also this cultural cliche of the machismo, the Marialva type. So they go about the colony shooting big game and sleeping with married women. So they are not at all likable characters. But
and there's also the photo with them both.
Right? They're both of them posing. Exactly.
With the eye pose, I didn't talk about that.
Yes.
Also
in a hunting reserve. So they are very much a type, a very unpleasant type. Then you have the testimony of Aldina Mariano, the poor girl who lived with Fontenova, and of course it shows a darker side of society. The woman who had an abortion, and etc. Of course, all of this should be hidden. All of this is excluded from the official narrative of what Portuguese society is. But it's also interesting because she, because of the way she talks about Fontenova and in how she shows that him being of an upper class kind of protected her, and she lived a fairy tale with him. And it helps build this character as a very honorable, idealistic character. Oh my God, I need to move fast. I'm almost finishing. Then you have that interesting Memento Mori fragment. And if you think about, I mean, cemeteries are very different from culture to culture, but cemeteries in Portugal resemble very much little cities. You have the mausoleums that are like tiny little houses. So this cemetery is like a second city within the city, a city for the dead. It's the timeless place, of course, because only the dead are there. And I think it's very symbolic of this timeless, alienated society. It seems to exist with no time. Time is suppressed because the subjects there have really no action, no way of intervening in the actual political and social context. So it's very symbolic of that. And Elias reads the newspaper in the cemetery as you would in a cafe. It's very interesting. The other fragment, it's again that idea of Elias as the voyeur, because he starts looking again at Mena's picture, and again Dantas. I think that's where the postcard comes, João. I think it's in this bit, as I recall. Man. And then you have the also very interesting testimony of Maria Nora, Mena's friend, which again helps build that idea of a character as a very modern woman, a woman, both of them actually, women that are, of course, out of this official narrative. And Mena will not survive in a way, so she gets caught up. To say she gets caught up, it's a bit, it's not the most correct way, because it devoids her of agency, and I don't think it's at all what happens there. But Mena, I would say she's more like the other characters, Fonte Nova and Barroca, or more like Fonte Nova perhaps. And what I think she does have an idea for the country. I don't think she's moved only by her affair with Dantas Castro. And then finally you have her father's statement, which adds nothing. It's just another example of that positioning of that upper class, a bit distant and a bit sure of their own position. And I think I actually, yeah, I actually skipped one of the fragments, one of the slide with some more fragments, because I think all of these, the appliances story, we've talked about it, but in the other three, the statement from the armed forces, the dear friend and lawyer, and in whose interest, what you have there is kind of the political narrative lurking in. And as you said before, João, there's this confusion about who are the responsible for the murder, and the officers blame the PID. And it's interesting and ironic that although that would be very convenient, I'm sure, for the political police, it turns out their work was done by someone else. Again, you have this external violence coming into the personal relationships. So it was those closest to Dantas Castro who murdered him. And I will finish with just a mention of this wonderful reptile, Elias's lizard, which of course can work as, you can think of it as a symbol of this Portuguese society, stuck with no action. The poor lizard is there in his cage, not a cage, a glass thing, right? Only observing, doing nothing, fed by Elias. He's mentioned as a timeless creature, or hovering over time, something like that. But it's also in a way an extension of Elias. There's a moment and during Mena's interrogation where she spots some mold.
Yes, that's it.
And it has a shape of a lizard, a gecko, looking at her, exactly like Elias. And to finish, coming back to what we talked about first, so why the detective novel? I think, João, you have already talked a bit about this, but the work of Elias, the detective, the work of the writer in this specific novel, and the work of the historiographer kind of resemble each other, right? They collect fragments. And actually here, going back, you have this moment where the author or editor talks. It's obvious in 1982 that the inspector in possession of the truth was, as it were, exploring the margins of the case for further angles and clarifications. So the work of them all is very similar. And I would say it's also the work in 1982 of the whole Portuguese society coming to terms with that great crime, of course, you alluded to in the beginning, or quoting the author, and collecting bits and pieces to make sense of it. So I would say that also the book, all of it shows this work. Okay?
Yes. Okay.
That's it. That's what I.
Okay. Thank you.
And ended
Thank
up
you
being a
very
bit long.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rita. I really loved your presentation. I think I would advise everyone to hear it once more, if possible. I will for sure hear it once more. And again, because I feel that I have so much to learn from you, Rita. It was really amazing, your presentation. And so I would like to open the debate to see if you want to ask questions to Rita. Okay? Okay. So please, the only thing you have to do is to put on your microphone and ask a question. Okay,
I think Drew quer perguntar.
Drew vem. Okay, please.
Probably he's got his mic off.
Druve, you can, no, I think is unable. Okay, so we'll move to Nashit. Nashit, please turn on your microphone.
Olá, pode me ouvir?
Sim, sim.
Boa tarde, Rita. Eu sou o Nashit. Eu tinha uma pergunta. Eu ainda não li a novela inteira, né? Porque vamos por semanas. Mas como você já leu o livro inteiro, minha pergunta é que sempre falamos das coisas positivas. Há alguma coisa na novela que você não gostou ou que você podia melhorar? Ou não, porque é uma novela tipo quase real, né? Então você viu alguma coisa que parece um pouco irreal ou não tão boa, na sua opinião?
Nashit, essa pergunta para mim é muito fácil de responder. Não. Acho-a perfeita, magnífica.
Ok, obrigado.
Acho que ele é um escritor magnífico, a todos os níveis, com um uso da língua extraordinário. Portanto, também trabalho com uma obra acabada, não me ocorreria pensar dessa maneira, mas é uma pergunta interessante.
Okay. I would like to go back to what you said about the genre, about being this detective novel, a kind of a failure as a detective novel, isn't it? Because as you said already, there isn't much suspense. We already know more or less what went on, and as a thriller, it's also a thriller with announcements. And for instance, in the page 46 is referred the visit of Elias to the cemetery, something that we will read further on. And then in the same page, it is stated that it is mentioned also the first session of with Mena, you know, the first session of the questioning, and it's something that we would read more about later on. So there are these announcements that completely take out the suspenseful kind of the suspenseful side of this genre, okay, of these detective stories or thrillers, you know. So it's like a failure in both it's a failure on its own. It's a genre that fails. And we see that it is failing, and we keep our interests elsewhere. You know, we find our interest going elsewhere, and it's very.
It's a wanted failure, of course,
Yes.
because of course, for us to read it for the suspense and for the thrill of it, we would have to be chasing the actual criminals, which we are not really.
We are not, of course.
So I really think that the genre highlights more this work of collecting bits and pieces. I really think that's why he used it. I'm not sure if he ever talked about it, because he gave so many interviews, but I think it must have been the reason.
Okay. Arihara, do you want to speak up?
Sorry, I'm Sharda. I'm using my father's phone because my battery in the phone is getting weak. Thank you very much, Rita ma'am, because it was very interesting how you presented the whole character to us, and really it gave us something like a character which are just not individuals but symbolizes larger struggles, struggle against justice versus corruption, and also freedom versus control, what I have understood from what you were talking, and personal truth versus official narratives, you know. So this is what I have understood when you were doing the presentation, and this novel makes both the engaging thriller and also deep psychological study, you know. And when you talk about the character of Meena, or so, because would you tell her like she's a heroine or a villain, or how would you like to take her, you know? And what about her? What is with her deeply human character she's shaped in this, you know, and in the whole story? This is what my whole thing is, because she was clever, she was intelligent, and she also was reading, I mean, everything she had, but also she was very smart in handling the situations. So, but at the same time, she felt also guilty and everything. So, I would like to know what your perception about this character.
So, I think that what I said about Elias and Dantas Castro also applies to Mena. They are all very, very ambiguous characters. They have conflicting motivations. They have conflicting feelings. Mena is indeed a very smart character. She's a very intelligent and manipulative woman, and I say this because of the way she behaves in the Casa da Vereda. And if you think about that idea of the traditional family that I told you about, so Mena would be the mother, of course, Dantas Castro, the father figure, and Barroca and Fonte Nova are the children, and Mena is always trying to manage in a way the relationship between them, but at the same time she's managing her own relationship with Dantas Castro, which is problematic on its own, but she's also manipulating those relationships. So in the end, when things start to turn the wrong way, and when things really start escalating in the house, there's a lot of Mena in the way those things develop. And it's interesting if you have the opportunity to watch the film, and I'm sure João is going to show it at some point. Their interpretation of the character highlights this darker side, this noir side of the character, a lot more than the novel. But for me, she's very ambiguous, as are all others. They're neither heroes nor villains. Elias is not, Dantas Castro is not, and Mena isn't either. She's just human. She's a person in a difficult situation with, of course, some ideals and an idea of this revolution for the country, obviously, but she's very closely linked to Dantas Castro, and they have that affair, and that also is what moves her a lot. And as the narrative unfolds, we will see that that escalating violence between them will indeed move the narrative and move the events. So to answer your question, I can't say she's either. She's both.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have, I don't know, we could have another question if someone wants to ask another question. We passed a little bit our time, but I think we can still manage answering one question more. No? Okay, Madam.
Can I ask, ma'am, would you consider, because we were just talking about whether it is a detective or how it was going on step by step, would you consider this as a more into the direction of psychological and political than procedural?
Yes, yes, definitely. I think, of course, you have all the, as João has already pointed out, you have all those fragments and all that scientific speech, but sorry, my cat keeps coming back. But I would not say that's the main focus. I would say all of those things are a way of building a portrait that is much more a psychological and a social portrait than you know, their focus is not the genre, so it's not to create that idea of the detective novel or the thriller. So yes, I most definitely think it goes more into the psychological portrait or a social novel in a way. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rita. Now I think we wrap this. Thank you so much for your participation. You are more than welcome to come more often. It was really a pleasure to listen to what you had to say. And we will see each other next week with the following chapter. Now it's just one, but it's big. So please, you have to speed up your readings. If you haven't finished the second part, you should, because now comes the bigger part of them all. Okay? Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Sue.